Hi, welcome to this episode of the Author's Way podcast, a journey to finding your voice. Today, I'm going to be introducing you to Ursula Lentine. She is a fantastic practitioner. So we talked about in the first episode, we talked about not only having authors on the show, but having practitioners who help authors. And so she's going to be sharing some great information with you today. But first, I just want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Execurite. We are a ghostwriting and book consulting company. We help authors, we help entrepreneurs, we help professionals to find their voices and make themselves more visible and put their words out into the world by writing their books. So reach out to us if you have a book in your head or in your heart that you want to get out there. So, Ursula, I am so happy that you have joined me here today. I'm very excited about our conversation. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited too. Being an author myself, I think that this is an excellent idea. There's so many people who are secretly thinking, "Oh, I could write a book and I should write that book," and for you to have an easy way for them to get to know you and to be thinking about the possibility that they could actually get a book in their hands is very exciting. So this is an excellent idea. I'm so glad you're doing this podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm very excited about it. And I'm very excited about, the people that we have the opportunity to talk to. You, especially, I'm very excited about our conversation. So you're a licensed minister with the Centers for Spiritual Living. You're also a practitioner of internal family systems. You're also a specialist. You're certified in Pranic Healing. And recently you became a doctor.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
so awesome.
Thank you. I have my doctorate in consciousness studies.
That is so awesome. I know that took a lot of work to get there.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but that's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
Actually, the book that I wrote was a part of my doctorate. So instead of a
Nice.
thesis, what we've done is the book. So I had to finish my book. I had started the book, and then I was like, whatever, it didn't, so it sat on a shelf, and then they said, okay, these are the things that you can hand in for, that's equivalent to a thesis, and I'm like, let me finish that book. I'm finally going to finish it. So thank you for bringing that up because it's very relatable.
Nice, nice. I love it. And I can't wait to read it. So I'm sure it will be awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
back to your question, you said, tell me about yourself. I lead a weekly meditation since 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we bless the planet with loving kindness. And what meditation does for us, especially your audience, is it calms the brain down because, as everybody knows, there's a lot of voices going on in there all the time. So it hushes them down enough where we can just feel love and feel connected and grounded and open-hearted, and it just calms things down because sometimes we're really rough on ourselves in our mind, and that creates synapses, and then that synapses, every time it fires, it creates a groove. So it's just like when you're riding a bike and there's a rut, you don't want to get in the rut because it's not fun trying to get out of the rut. So it's just like these ruts in our brain of negative thoughts and things like that. So the meditation smooths those ruts over as well. So it's and this one's a guided meditation. People think, oh, I'm going to meditate, and they just sit down and think they're going to quiet their mind for 5 minutes, and it's like that's the hardest meditation to do. So this is a guided meditation, which is one of the better successful meditations.
Okay.
And then
you do that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you do that every week, right?
Every week, Tuesday, online or in person if you live in Atlanta. And it's super easy. All you do is show up. people who have never meditated before, they show up and they get an experience.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then I also do, my primary thing that I do is subconscious work, where we go into the subconscious and we talk to different parts of us. So very similar to the book writing process, we have characters in our book. But inside of us, we have characters in our head, and some of them are not kind, and some of them are lonely, and some of them are scared, and some of them don't want to say anything because they'll get in trouble, and then all the emotions can count as parts. So if you can think of characters in a book, there's like characters in our head, but they all talk at the same time, so we think there's just like one voice in our head. But if we start really looking at it, it's a bunch of voices saying the same things over and over again, driving us crazy. So I help reduce the voices and solve the problems that are, being caused by the chronic conditions. Usually a voice will represent an event that we haven't been able to heal.
Awesome. Yeah. And full disclosure, I've actually been working with Ursula with some of this, and I have found it to be such a sometimes a very calming experience, and sometimes a very eye-opening experience. And it's been overall just tremendously helpful
Thank you.
so far. But I also know it's a process.
It is a process.
It'll continue to unfold.
Yeah. It's a journey from our head to our heart, basically. Right? Because the thing is, our heart gets broken in many different ways when we're a kid, just through different experiences. And we all have this thing, we're not good enough. And I don't know, why God said, let's put that in there and see how that goes. But we close the door and we run to our head and we try to figure everything out. And then we get to an adult and we're like, oh, this isn't working. So then we do a U-turn and we start digging back down to find out what's in our heart. And there's a lot of beauty down there, a lot of gold down there, a lot of creativity down there. As a matter of fact, when we were talking about doing this podcast, I went back to a client and I said, hey, do you mind if I share your story about this? And he's like, yeah, go right ahead. He came to me because he's writing a screenplay and he got stuck because the one character was a father. And he was like, So he was just like, I'm stuck. I got writer's block, blah, blah, blah. And then we went in and did the work, and there was a lot of opening. And then he was able to continue on his script, and he's thrilled now. He's so excited. He's made time in his day, he's doing it. He's being more present with his family because he's feeling good. The writing process is a very personal thing, super, super personal. So it causes us to kind of start looking inside. And if we oh, I don't, wait a minute, I just want to write a book. I don't want to really look at my soul.
Yeah. That's actually one of the reasons I want to make sure that I have people like you, practitioners, people who work with creatives and writers, because it is such a personal process. It is such a brain and heart and soul process. And we get blocks. And I think, most creatives, we run into blocks and limiting beliefs and things that keep us from getting to that next step. And I think a lot of the work that you do is really helpful to clear out those blocks and get us to the point where we can move on and get past those things that are holding us back. And there's tools and there's practices that we can put in place. And I think that's one of the things that you do really, really well, is helping people find those tools and practices that we can do. So is there anything that you specifically think about when you think about removing those limiting beliefs, those blocks?
Yes, because if they're there, then it's like us against the block, us against the block, us
Mhm.
against the block. So then we go into avoidance, distraction, procrastination, and now, like nothing's getting done and we're just compounding. It's like, nah, and then we're like, hey, let's make it worse, And so there's
Yeah.
no, it's like that. So how can you even get out of that is by saying, okay, asking for help really, because we get caught in that trap and we can't even break out by ourselves. So
Mhm.
if we can ask for help and say, look, I got this issue, I'm blocked, I'm stuck, and then come to people like me, go to a meditation, and then we can talk about journaling, how important that is,
Mhm.
because when we're journaling, we're doing, and not, today I did this, and no, but saying, what am I feeling right now? That's the best question to open up, because you can say, oh, I feel sad. And that's an entry. Okay, you admitted it, you named it,
Mhm.
right? Okay, what do I feel sad about? Well, I feel sad about these 20 things, and then, oh, look down here, I'm really feeling sad about this. So it's a private place for us to get real with ourselves and to ask ourselves uncomfortable questions. But as we write, sometimes when we're writing, something will like wake up within us and say, oh, you want to talk about the truth? Are we going to tell the truth right now? And you're like, yeah, I think so. Like, I'll just let the pen keep going. And it's just freestyle writing, and you're not really like, sentences don't matter and all of that. And you just keep going and keep going. Something inside will start talking and coming
Mhm.
through that, and then letting the emotions really have a voice. And then you're like, yeah. And then you may close the book and have a realization, like, I hadn't thought about that in a long time. Wow. And now you're in that creative space again. Because now you may want to go and like make a meal or draw a picture or, explore something, create something. Because creative people, that's how they process. So the creative thing is not just making art, it's a process. If you talk to lots of artists, they'll tell you this is a process. That's why this piece of work is $1,000, because they put their heart and soul in it, because they
Mhm.
have a craft and a skill. So even when they're writing, because that's my mom and my sister make paintings, and they're gorgeous, like the one behind you. Like they're like, oh my God, that could be in a gallery painting quality. And me, I make stick figures. So I was like, oh, they've got the creative. But no, mine comes out in writing and in the way I work with people and through my spirituality. So people can be creative in many different ways. So I think asking for help, an easy tool would be journaling. I always recommend people to go outside, because there's a lot of energy outside, life force energy, prana, and the eye will look at tree shapes and like calm down. So even looking at nature pictures, if people can't go outside, will calm the system down. But if we put ourselves out in nature, the oxygen molecules, the earth, the sounds, really just walking around in our neighborhood will equalize us, make a harmony within us, because we harmonize with nature. It's not to be on our podcast or on our phone, but just to be in nature, looking around, taking it all in, will calm us down and kind of open us up. So those are some strategies and tools that we could use when we get blocked.
I love where you're going with that. One of the things that I've always felt, I like having lots of things going on at one time. So if I'm feeling stuck in one area, I'll go I'll go paint, or I'll go draw, or I'll go just like you're saying, journaling. I love that. It I think a lot of times we just keep trying, and we say, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write for an hour, and it doesn't come. And then we get frustrated with that. And I have an hour to write and I can't, nothing can happen. And we put so much pressure on us to get that done. I think it is important sometimes when that happens, maybe you do need to pull out the journal or take a walk outside, and just maybe just stop putting that pressure.
Yeah,
on
I know.
yourself.
Right. But then, so that let me talk about parts now, because in the internal family systems, the parts work that we do, there's a part that's like, okay, we're 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you're gonna write, and you're like, okay, okay. So your creative part, flowers in their hair and just kind of hanging out, it's like, hippie and all of that. They don't like that. They're like, yeah, you want to write? Okay. And they'll be like, "Get ready! Here's a pen. Like here's this typewriter. You got an hour, like 10 minutes." And the other part's like, "I'm not feeling it right now." Right? So we're like, "Oh, what do I do with this?" So it's two parts. So it's to ask your hippie part, or your creative part, or your silly part, or your childlike part, like, "Well, what do you need?" And they'll be like, I haven't played at all. I haven't done anything fun in like 2 weeks. Like, how do you expect me to be creative when you've been bossing me around for the last 5 days? I've been just sitting in the corner while you get your tasks done and eat the right food and, like do all this stuff you're supposed to do. Like, that's not who I am. So it's kind of like having a child inside of us. And a child is creative and needs play space. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, and self-care is gigantic in a creative process, right? So I'm in the spiritual realm, and self-care must happen for me to go about my day spiritually speaking. A creative person has to do the self-care, so they're always nurturing that creative part, because that creative part likes to play, likes variety, likes colors, likes outside, likes, funny movies, likes. So if we're feeding that part of us on a regular basis, and we say, okay, come on, it's time to sit down and write, they're ready to write because you've been nurturing them all along.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am probably one of the guiltiest at not nurturing that.
Well, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's the American
Yeah.
way, Jennifer. It is the American way. We have been conditioned like you are good if you follow the rules and do the right thing, and you are being human if you don't. Like, we're not being valued for our human nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so eye-opening. Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about your own writing process. How do you, I know you help a lot of people, but how do you're human too. How do you kind of handle what happens when you get stuck and not sure what the next step is?
Well, after I submitted the book, like the day I submitted the book, I got like a download in my languaging. It was like an inspiration. And it's like, okay, that was good that you submitted the book for your class. But now, in order to make it more publicly, like tangible, digestible, playful, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how to do that. And they're like, just submit the book. We'll work with you. And I'm like, oh my God. So then I've been kind of hemming and hawing about it, and there's no deadline. So that's very helpful. And I have found that I work better in blocks. So I don't work an hour like at a time, because I'm so elsewhere that it takes me a long time to land and get settled in order for that flow to happen. So Saturday, I've got the entire day. Tomorrow, I've got the entire day blocked off, and it's book. So for me, I like my house clean, because I like cleaning. It's immediate gratification. I feel settled when my space is clean around me. I know artists, my mom and my sister, they'll have stuff all around going on because that's how they flow. But for me, so I just clean my house, so I feel like, oh, I've accomplished something. And I usually sit outside because that's my happy place. And I put the lounge chair on, I build my fire, and I got the fire going, and the computer and my water, and I'm just in my book, in my space. So that's my best way. And then I'll work for hours, and then I'll go take a walk, I'll call a friend, and then I'll come back and I'll work, from morning to night. And and then I get a ton of work done, and I feel so delighted. And I'm totally looking forward to it because it's my play space, to be with my book. Because the book has this whole life of its own. Like, it tells me what to do. It's like, no, that's not right, and do this and change that. And I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah. So it's almost like the book and I are having a relationship of creativity.
I love that. And I think there's so many writers out there that they get caught in the writing process. And it really, truly is kind of a spiritual event that you're going to. And I feel that way about a lot of creative work. When I'm painting, I see that as my meditation.
Yes.
Because it's a time for me to just focus on that. Everything else just kind of goes away. And it's the same way when I'm writing. It's almost like a spiritual meditative type of event for me.
Well, talking about that, I don't use the word God because, that's not the man in the sky thing. But I think of that as an intelligent energy. But going back to the reference of God, God the Creator, the Father, the Creator, right? The highest thing that God does is create. We were created. The earth was created. When we are being a creator, I feel like it's our highest expression as a human being.
Mm.
So then people who are very creative, artists, musicians, and so on, they like, here's the timeline of peace. I think peace is like a great reference. If we could all get to peace, we would just be a lot better. And then you can go up and down, right? You can be happy, you can be sad, you can be joyful, you can be depressed. But in the artist's world, they go way up here and create, and they're one with God, right? Because you're just flowing. Yes, there's a plan, but there's a lot of flow going on. And it's so delightful and so yummy. You're like, yeah, cool, this is great. Whether it's something physically you can see, or a story, or an article. And then after that, our human thing comes in and it's like, I don't know. You're like, what do you mean you don't know? That's wonderful. I don't know. It's just like a phenomena. And then we'll go past the peace line and down into the dark place. And then drugs and alcohol are down here. And then it's like the human part of us separates from the God part of us. And it's like, well, I didn't really do that. It just, like, I don't know what it is, but it's just a balancing thing. So we'll crash and burn. This is where you come in, Jennifer, because when people are working with a professional book person to help them through the process, they'll create and they'll come in and you'll be like, okay, now we're doing this class, or now we're doing this thing, and they can land on you and not have to go down, because when you go down you have to crawl back up, get to here, and then get inspired, and then here, and then it happens again. You see, so this diagonal process here can be stopped when we have that professional support to kind of like a trampoline, right? Or don't fall off the trampoline, I got you. And then they can go back and forth, back and forth. But I think working with a professional is the best way to go in the writing process, because it'll take years otherwise.
So we've talked in our personal conversations about having a team of people surrounding us.
Yes.
So what are some of your recommendations or your thoughts around what should we be looking for to have, the right network, the right people, the right team, in our circle?
So as a writer, I would have you for sure, because you're going to walk them through the writing process. I would also have them have a health coach, or somebody around health, make sure they're moving their body, because sometimes we get too stuck in our head. And like you said, if you're stuck, you need to get up and move your body. So if we're moving our body, or we have somebody, accountability coach, and we have like a mastermind where we're really processing and talking to other people, like, what are you working on? What's your goals? Someone's like, okay, how did you do last week? You don't want to say, oh, I didn't do nothing. I just, you're like, okay, I did this thing, or I called that publisher, or so accountability people, health people, mental, emotional wellness, that's what I do. Even just come to the meditation, that'll help. Um, it's just really important to have a team, because if we don't have a team, our human nature will take over and we'll just keep failing, and then we'll feel bad. It's like this thing, and then you start procrastinating, and then you're stuck in that triangle. When we have a team, that triangle can't take hold, and that triangle gets addressed, so we can actually be the creator that we were meant to be.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's so important to ask for help. And I've had times in my life where I see myself as very independent, and I can do it myself. I can figure this out myself. And a lot of times we can, but it just makes it so much easier to have people in our lives that are.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, it's like, I'll just do it. I don't want to spend the money, or I don't want to do this, or I don't have time, or whatever. Nothing really does get done. And any professional
Mm-hmm.
person who's, being a rock star and executing things and doing things, they have coaches. And that's why, because it's against our human nature just to be like,
Right.
oh, it's scary to try new things. But when I get my help, when I go to my coaches and I'm just like, God, that was great. Somebody believes in me, somebody loves me, somebody supports me, somebody
Mm-hmm.
sees me. And it's just so much easier. It's just like a new pair of tennis shoes or something. Like, it's just like you feel supported, and you feel like, yeah, of course I can do this.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it can be such a lovely experience to know that you have that help. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I have so much enjoyed this conversation. I could go on probably for hours. I have learned so much from you today, and you and I have had conversations in the past, but this has been great. I have learned so much. I hope the audience has learned a lot from you. So tell us what you have going on right now. That what programs, or what kind of things do you have, or what's next for you?
Okay, so I have the meditation like we spoke about. I invite everybody and encourage everybody to come. Try it once and you'll see. I do the private sessions, of course, and then I have a class called Self-Mastery. So I'm teaching similar to the tools I gave today, but I'm teaching about crafting our center, because when the world is changing as it is, and unpredictable and so on, we can't control that, but we can control the way we respond to the world. So we are working in the self-mastery class. We meet twice a month on Thursdays, online or in person if you're in Atlanta. And we just move through, and I teach all these tools and techniques that are outside of the box, but very practical and reasonable, little by little, step by step. And that's a super fun class that I'm really enjoying, and my students are enjoying too.
That's awesome. We will be putting all the links, the link to your website and the links to those programs in the show notes. So check those out if you want to get in touch with Ursula about anything that she's working on. One last question before we wrap up for today. I love it when I hear that people who are writing are reading as well. And most people who are writers are readers. And would love to hear about any book or books that you've read in your life that have been very meaningful to you, or really influenced you.
The main book that changed my life when I was like just beginning on my spiritual path is by James Allen, and it's As a Man Thinketh. It's a little teeny book, old school writing, old school language, but it basically says how we think and how we perceive the world is how we're experiencing the world, but it breaks it down into a way that's very personal. And then somebody went behind and said and wrote the female version because he uses he, and that's the book I knew and read for years. And then somebody put it in it when it was she. It was very like, oh, this is different to hear it say she. So as a woman thinketh or as a man thinketh would be an excellent book that I could recommend. I'm a big reader because I'm self-educated, and I've had hundreds of books that I've tried to be like, I gotta get rid of some of these books. I've always I've written, put it at least let me honor by writing the title down before I give it away. But out of the hundreds of books that I've read, that's the one I would highly recommend the most. It's been the most impactful in my life.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I have not read that book. I'm gonna have to get that book and try it out. So thank you so much for being here today. This was such a lovely experience for me. And I'm very excited. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again because you are such a wealth of knowledge, and not only for writers, for all creatives, and just anyone who's just looking to get better at
Yes.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's so much magic inside of us, and if we could really get in touch with that magic and share it with the world, I mean, the world would be a better place, and we would surely have a happier life.
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.